All right, let's hear it for our panelists. We have Gregg Wattenberg. We have Mann. We have Mike Campbell. And we have Rich Christina. So thank you everybody for being here. Students as well as hit songwriters and publishers. It's going to be a great event. I'm going to start off. I would like you guys to just introduce yourselves, maybe tell us about a current project that you're working on. You can go either way. Coin toss.
So my name is Gregg Wattenberg, writer, producer, publisher also, and currently in the studio finishing up with Jason Mraz, and just started working on a song with John Legend, and then also some new artists that are developing, which is exciting.
I'm Billy Mann. I'm a songwriter, producer who has transitioned my career more towards a music publisher and manager. This year I worked on a few projects, Pink being one of them, some artists internationally, but really developing artists, particularly leaning towards hip-hop, like guys like, who some people might know, Super Mario, Flawless, people are doing Drake, J. Cole, Young Thug, and also working on developing platforms of the digital space that further the careers for songwriters and people who want to embrace technology.
Hi, I'm Mike Campbell. I am a songwriter. I've been just flying back and forth between LA and New York. I was in the studio with Monsters and Strangers in February. We did that song, The Middle, which you guys might know. It's a big smash right now. And a bunch of other writers, just trying to get the next big song.
My name is Rich.
Hi, Rich Christina, head of A&R for Sony TV here in New York City. I work with songwriters and artists, and obviously write songs. Currently finishing up Drake's album, Unless You're Gaslight Anthem, Neighborhood, and recently finished G-Eazy. It's busy and fun, but a lot of pressure.
Amazing. And again, thank you guys for taking time out of your busy schedules to be here. So I'd like to start it out by maybe, I think the students would really like to know where you got your first big break, or something that really made you feel like, this is for me. This is a career path for me. Want to start, Gregg?
Yeah. For me, the thing that told me this was for me was probably different than the thing that was actually success. But the thing, because it's rare that you get success on the first time out, but, and this, you guys could apply this if you're interested in being a songwriter and producer, is I found a band, just a local band. You have friends who are artists, and I just thought I could make their songs better. Nothing more, nothing less. I just had an opinion. And they were willing to listen to my opinion. The only reason they listened to it is because I was answering phones at a record company. They thought I had an in. They didn't realize that was just about as low as you could go on the total with the record company. So I went in to a studio, they paid for it, and I fixed all their songs. I made the tempos, the lyrics, the melody, everything you do as a producer. And then they got a record deal at that record company that I answered phones at, Island Records. And that was when I realized I could do this, because up until then, nobody cared if I could do it. Nobody thought I could do it, other than I could do it. And you realize at the end, your opinion that's it. The only difference between you and the next guy is your opinion. If your opinion's better, good things will happen. So that project wasn't a success, but that was what made me realize I could do this.
I think there are two answers to that question. One is, what was your big break as it relates to the music industry, and what is the big break that relates to you and what advances your career? And I'd say my first big break was one of my best friends growing up was a kid named Scott Kramer, who just believed that I was writing good songs even though they were terrible, and was willing to go and tell friends and hang posters if we did gigs to just get people to come out. And I'd say the first big break is people who believe in your life. And that can either be your first manager, it can be your friend, it can be a music teacher. that to me had significantly more impact than the really terribly crappy contract that Gregg helped get for me, which is a true story in the beginning of my career.
By the way, I signed the same crappy contract.
and we both signed the same crappy contract, and we both lived to tell the story to you guys today, and have both, and I say this in the most humble way, achieved far better and far more than the person that gave us the really, really crappy contract. So I give you great props for that.
Thank you.
There's a lot to learn from those crappy contracts too.
Mike?
I got my big break. I went to school down here, I went to NYU, I'm from upstate. And I came back after school, after taking a year off, and I was writing songs, and I didn't really feel like an artist, like I didn't feel like I belonged on stage. But I was writing songs with my friends, and we were poor living in Queens, and those friends that I was writing with happened to be the guys who were Great Big World. And so we wrote this song, Say Something, and it was just a song on a ukulele and guitar. And it sat around for years, and then it got placed on a TV show, and then all of a sudden it's got Christina Aguilera on it. It happens kind of faster than you can really appreciate, but at that point I started taking meetings, and people were like, what else are you working on? And I was like, wait, what? So I was writing, but not to send songs to other artists, so that was like the point where I realized that you could write songs and other people could record them and they could, go the distance. I don't know why it didn't dawn on me before that. I feel like my dad told me for years about like the Brill building where they used to write all the songs and pitch to artists, but it finally clicked then, and that was how I got in. And now I'm still here, which is I'm very grateful to be speaking to you guys today about it. So.
So I think we all up here share a lifelong love of music. And I think at this point we probably all share the same feeling that we're not qualified to do anything else other than this. I agree with Billy that your big breaks come from people that believe in you. I started collecting records as a 9-year-old. In high school, a friend of mine had DJ equipment but no records, and he came to me and said, hey, I got equipment. If you have records, why don't you DJ with me? I'll teach you to DJ, which he did. He said, I'll put songs. In college, I went to a small school in southern New Jersey, who wound up sort of being a fairly popular DJ. One of my fraternity brothers happened to be Turkish. He graduated before me, and Ahmet Erdogan, who ran Atlantic Records, was a huge supporter of Turkish executives and hired him. And he, unbeknownst to me, went really hard trying to get me an internship at Atlantic Records. I got a random phone call from the HR department at Atlantic Records offering me an interview. I had long hair, earrings, didn't own a suit. I cut my hair, took my earrings out, bought a suit, went to the interview, and everyone was dressed like Billy and Gregg, and there was like smoking in their office. And I begged for the internship, and the person that hired me said, put your earrings back in, lose the suit, I'll see you on Monday. And I've been in the music business now for 28 years thanks to that opportunity.
So I believe next we have some students that are very excited to play a couple songs for you guys. So we're ready to do this?
First, we're going to introduce Jason Lee. He's going to be performing On This Road.
Drifting through empty days alone.
So I think, however you feel like you want to, if you have something to say, then just go ahead and start.
I got a crappy publishing deal right here if you want to sign it. It's really good. The first thing I was thinking was you were using all these interesting chord changes in the verse, which most new songwriters just kind of copy the same 4-chord progression that every other song has on the radio. So good job pushing the boundaries and gluing it all together. So I no critique other than really good work. Wait,
What I would say, especially with ballads, is I am definitely biased towards songs that are written from the perspective of an I and you. I just think they're stronger. So I love that because it's a lot more inviting. And I would say to you, and this is not critical to songwriting, but in general, is it'd probably be good for you to also work with singers to help you flush out some of the melodic ideas that you have, which you hear in your head. But sometimes it's hard to execute, especially if I'm writing this, let's say you're writing a song for a female artist. So tap into all the talent that's around you to help you craft that, because it may help you to find even more avenues to walk down musically than you can do, seeing as how right now you're doing everything by yourself. But I think you did a great job.
Thank you.
I was thinking that I really liked your voice, especially in the low register. It made me think of like Sam Smith. It's like super soulful. What kind of stuff are you listening to? Are you listening to Sam Smith or something else?
No, I listen to a lot of Billy Joel.
A lot of what?
Billy Joel.
Oh, cool. Well, yeah, there you go. That's great. Makes perfect sense. Yeah, and I think that we could sort of match the lyrics to what, because we're hearing you come back from the auditorium, like your voice, so I was trying to follow along, but it's a good start lyrically, and it's got a nice idea to it. Well, it's...
I took the book instead of the second part first.
Listen, we all make mistakes.
The song's called This or Not by
I don't think any publishers or A&Rs are going to be too worried about that. But but yeah, really good job though. Awesome.
Thank you.
I think Billy is correct. Writing from personal experience is really the most important as a songwriter. Certainly something I look for, like you, especially as a young person, you're trying to communicate to other, mostly young people, so you want to really sort of like give a lot of yourself in the song so that folks sort of feel like they can connect to it personally. And I think you've done that. So keep doing it.
A nice round of applause again for Jason. Thank you guys. It was really valuable feedback. Next up, we have Jennifer Liu. Go ahead. Let's have a nice round of applause. She's going to be singing Sail Away is the correct name, yes? All right, so I apologize. In the programs, it says Don't Sail Away, but this is Sail Away. All right. That was really beautiful. You guys can start.
Yeah, it's really good. You sort of as it just right when it got good for me, you stopped. Like the don't sail away kind of was the best part. So I think I know you're not playing a full song right now, but definitely develop that out. That's really strong. The don't sail away hook there's something really special there, and your voice is really the way it sounded in that part was just vulnerable, and I felt it, and good sort of first half of a song, but definitely don't underestimate how good that part could be.
I agree. I think the Don't Sail Away, just that part and melodically and how it's set up by the lyric and what you're saying really took off for me. My favorite part, the part that brought me in, was the I Stand Still, Let the Pain Just Disappear, the melody there and that section. And I would maybe argue that maybe the section between that and Don't Sail Away, it might be interesting for me, and obviously this isn't the time and place to do it, but I would say it may be interesting to look at that section here where I take a stroll, and maybe that's a C structure of the song, because the Don't Sail Away was so strong for me. But really good, and really, really good structure. Excellent.
The guys, I think the hook was the strongest melody. It was really sweet. I was just thinking what Billy said for the previous song about ballads, and I kind of wonder if it could lyrically have something a little bit more about what you're feeling, like who you're going through this with, because I wasn't quite sure. Like, did you have something happen that, you don't have to tell us here, but something happened that kind of inspired the song, like, to you? Was there, like, a situation or something?
Yeah, I mean, this song I intended to be, it overall encompasses some emotions and long-term feelings. Like, it's kind of like escapism. It's like you want to temporarily just sail away from this fast-paced environment that you're in.
Sure, okay. Yeah, that's a great answer. I think if there is any kind of like situation or something with somebody that is making you feel this way, I think lyrically it could be cool to incorporate some of that, get a little bit more you in there, if that's applicable. And don't get me wrong, I don't want to change it, but yeah, hook's really great, really pretty, great job.
I thought you communicated the emotion of the song quite well. I understood sort of your feelings about, or directly reflected in the lyrics. I agree with Billy that it would probably be more powerful to get to the chorus sooner and utilize that I Stand Still part to set up your chorus. I think that would be really powerful.
Thank you so much, guys. Excellent feedback. All right, next up, we have Liam Kronman. Liam is going to be performing Angelica.
Really nice job, Liam. The thing that stood out for me was the piano parts. A lot of great songwriters, Billy Joel, Elton John, the piano parts sort of driven songs. You have that part, I think that's really good. My suggestion, something Billy said earlier to one of the other students, was a collaborator. I think songwriting is all about collaboration. You tell people all the time that Paul McCartney needed John Lennon for the most part. Most songs today are written by 2 people, 5 people, whatever it is, I think help you flesh out the melodies a little bit, and also just the singing. I think sometimes great piano players need to sort of have somebody singing to accompany them to help sort of flesh out the melodies and kind of own the whole thing before they perform it. So for me, it feels like you would probably really benefit from a collaborator who also is a killer singer melody writer, because you're doing interesting things on the piano, which feels to me like somebody's going to do that again. It hasn't been done in a long time. And classic piano songs will never go out of style. So I think you're onto something really interesting.
Thank you.
Oh, you're welcome.
I would say, I mirror what Greg said, because the piano playing is like, a great piano is like a carnival that you bring with you, and can really, you get such an enormous palette to play with. You have basically the whole band. You have your bass player and your guitar player, and you can build a whole landscape around a song you're writing. I would say, just as a general, to all songwriters from a lyrical standpoint, is how do you say something, but how do you try to find a way to articulate that in a way that hasn't been said before? And that's a really difficult thing to do. It's a difficult thing to find that turn of phrase, and I can, Say Something is a version of that song. Gregg's written tons of songs that there's just a turn of phrase that takes something that's very simple to all of us, but it's said in a slightly different way. So I would say this as a general for all the songwriters, the ones that are playing here, and also for the people, for all of you who are interested in developing it, is how do you say something that's direct, but say it in a way that feels like you haven't heard it said in that way before. And so I think that's the benefit of a collaborator, is you have someone who's going to spar with you and challenge you to maximize the lyrics to complement how extraordinary the piano playing is.
Yeah, I agree with all that. I liken it to playing tennis. You can play tennis by yourself if you're hitting against a wall, but you're not going to get better unless you play with somebody who's hitting it back to you. And just off what Billy was saying, we as songwriters, I find myself in a room all the time, and there's all the normal things that you would say, like, I love you, or I miss you, and then you're like, that comes out as a lyric, and you're like, okay, but how can I say that in a way that no one has ever said it before? And it's probably the hardest part of the job, because at the core of it, we all feel these emotions. We all, know what it is to love or to miss. But, there's a difference between I love you and I could drink a case of you. You know what I mean? And that's kind of the part where having a collaborator to come up with that crazy idea can really take the song the distance. So I totally agree with the guys on that. And yeah, your piano is great, super theatrical. I was wondering if you listened to any theatrical folks when you were playing, but Elton John's a good reference for sure. So great job.
Beyond writing with other writers being great practice, there's also a lot to be learned, like tricks of the trade, and you pick up different sort of traits from other writers. So it's almost like being trained and being on a team. Again, you're sort of like, you get to build up your strengths from collaborating with others. It's super important. And as the guys said, at Sony ATV, same thing. We've had very fortunate, the last year, we 52 weeks, #1. Every one of those songs had multiple songwriters on them. So there is obviously a benefit to collaboration that's important and great for your growth. Yeah, I agree that also your piano playing is really strong. I love the energy of your piano playing. But as the guy said, it's really important for all the singers and songwriters today to collaborate more and get stronger.
You guys, thank you so much. Liam, excellent job. One more round of applause for Liam. All right, let's have a round of applause for Jessie. She is going to be performing Villains of Our Own Stories.
Hey, my old friend, where have all your neighbors gone? Have they seen it all and left this town? I've lived in a cave, I've traced the same old path again, but I feel something's left behind between the cracks. So you must ask, why have we not changed our minds? We're the villains of our own stories. How long have you been drifting? How long have I been hiding? How long have we even waited for just the right time to say goodbye? Hey, my old friend, toss a rope and pull me out. Will I see it all again? Give it up. So you must ask, why have we not changed our minds? We're the villains of our own stories. How long have you been drifting? How long have I been hiding? How long have we even waited for just the right time to say goodbye?
I said it once, I'll say it again. That was a great job, Jesse. Really cool song. Your voice is really good. Love all the melody moves that you do. The verse is one of those melodies. It just sounds like a classic songwriter melody. I would suggest get in the studio, get with a good producer, and I'm sure someone in this room is probably an awesome producer, and record the song for real. Like, I think, there are TV shows right now that want that song, and I think you got to get it out there. There are companies like where Rich is, Sony, and then there are companies that just service songwriters like you and license it, and next thing you know, you have fans, and all the while you're writing more songs. So I think it's a very strong start. Really good job.
I thought I loved it. I worked with an artist that I love called Ingrid Michaelson, and if you haven't heard of her, you should check her out because she has a similar, just whimsical, wonderful way of telling a story and turning a phrase. And you mentioned it before, and we talked about it earlier, but the idea, and I was really studying the lyrics more because I got to hear it a second time, but the Villains of Our Own Stories is really good, and it says so much about self-sabotage, and that's just a great turn of phrase. The only critical thing I might ask you to think about is, melodically, I love this, how long have you been drifting, how long have I been hiding, how long have we been waiting for just the right time to say goodbye? And I'm almost wondering if you could revisit We're the Villains of Our Own Stories one more time in that third section, either at the beginning or the end, because it's so strong. You know, I would say to people, especially when you're talking about commercial songwriting, you want to give people something that they can wrap their arms around, and even if they don't follow all of the words, that they get some ownership, even in an early listen, that they can take with them. It helps to make that song more commercial in the long term, but absolutely spectacular job.
I also loved it, and I immediately thought of Ingrid Michaelson. So, do you listen to her?
Yeah.
Okay, good. So we got that base covered. Yeah, I mean, she does a lot of ukulele stuff, but other things too. I thought your melodic instincts were just really great. There were a lot of little nuances to your melody, kind of stuff I wish I could do. But just really, really nice melodies, and your voice is very good. And yeah, I mean, it's, I've heard other songs before that, they're like kind of lacking that cohesive idea, the thing that, Billy was pointing out, that thing to hold on to. And you have a really good one here, so I would just echo that, it's never a bad thing to say the title more than once. But great job.
First, I want to say all the songwriters and performers were excellent. Your song and your performance was sort of the complete package. It's good to sort of agree with the rest of the guys here. It's pretty quite excellent. And Billy is correct. Like, the important things about songwriting is, and what makes them memorable is the melody and the repetition of the chorus. And you're like, I think this is like 99.9% there. And I thought you really also had a very good sense of where you were in the song and the pocket of the song and carried it so beautifully. So really amazing job.
Thank you so much. So for the next segment of this, I would like to open it up to you guys and give you a rare opportunity to ask some specific questions that might be on your minds. So raise your hands if you have a question that you would like to ask, and I'm going to come around and take some questions.
So earlier you mentioned how you advise people to collaborate with others and maybe lend the lyrics you write to someone else's voice. How do you suggest to kind of bring the personal experience or the very closeness of the lyrics that you write and have that work with someone else?
I mean, I'll respond to that because I made the comment. If you ask most commercial songwriters, they're going to, in one way or another, describe co-writing as speed dating. And you got to kiss a lot of frogs before you find someone you connect with. Sometimes childhood friends meet and they know each other so well, so it's automatic. Paul McCartney and John Lennon, for example. But beyond that, you can look at a lot of acts that start with young artists who are the same age you guys are now, Fun, Maroon 5. I can go through a pretty long list where it's people that grew up together, that connect, and they can have that dialogue. So in the absence of that, if you say, oh, I'm going to be one of those people that goes out and starts writing songs with other people, it is like dating. You have to go out and connect with people, and sometimes you're going to sit down and it's going to suck real bad. And you're going to have to look at the other person and try to bring out the best connection you can. So it's really about not like a silver bullet theory. You can't just say, oh, I'm going to write with this person and all my prayers are answered and it's going to be perfect. But you're going to have to try. It's a lot of trial and error. And even with the people that you do connect with, the best ones are constantly whittling away at it to make sure that what they come up with in the end to present commercially is the absolute best it can be. It can't just be, sorry, I'm giving another Ingrid Michaelson reference, but I've been in the studio where we write a song together and we're like, this is amazing. And then the joke is, I think we're high on cheese. It's like, for some reason, we just think everything sounds amazing. So you need to have that reality check with the person that you're working with. And that just takes trial and error.
We do the same at the publishing company. If I sign a young writer, we probably spend the most part of a year discussing what it is you're trying to accomplish from your collaborations and try to find folks that sort of meet that criteria. And as Billy said, you got to go through a lot of folks where it doesn't work out to find the people that you do, and then you just sort of double back to those folks. It's not almost like that dissimilar from making friends. You're getting into a new classroom and a new class, and there's new people there, and you sort of gravitate towards people that you feel connected to. So it's very similar with songwriting. I try a lot of different things, but It's also, as Billy said, sometimes hard to recognize the good from the bad. It's just time and trial and error. But everybody goes through it, and most writers that are devoted to the craft will find their way through and find their people.
Hi, once again, thank you for being here. I'm Ian. What are some big don'ts that you shouldn't do? Because, I mean, you've done a lot over the stuff you should do. Are there any things that you should really try and avoid?
How much time do we have?
Well, I think, something that's good to avoid, these guys just said, is thinking that everything you do is great, right? I tell songwriters the key is to know what's bad, and a lot of songwriters don't know what's bad. So how do you know what's bad? You get somebody in your life who has good taste. They don't have to be a songwriter. They have to be a good music listener. Could be your friend, could be your guy like Rich Christina here, was my publisher. Somebody who has higher quality taste than my mom, and basically can go, that chorus isn't as good as you think it is. And I don't fight him on it. I just throw it in the garbage, and I write another one.
Your mom has impeccable taste.
Yes. She still wants me to work with Barry Manilow. She doesn't get it. So anyway, don't believe the hype. It's when you say don't do it, don't, and it's a tricky thing because you have to get room to get passionate about what you're doing. So you're allowed to fall in love with your idea, but have a bit of a reality check. Have someone outside that room, and maybe it's two people, but you'll start to see that good ideas tend to be pretty contagious, and more than one person will say it's great. So that's my suggestion what not to do.
And I'm going to give the flip side of that coin. I think that you have to believe in, if you you have strong conviction that what you made is great, and you're really hard on yourself. I've had people tell me a song that I wrote wasn't good enough, and then that song went the distance. In that, I could have just said, he's right, and just kind of trashed it, but I didn't. So it's a balancing act, because you're 100% right. If somebody tells you that, this isn't good enough, you should definitely take a good, long, hard look at it. But if you still believe after you do that good, long, hard, critical look, maybe they're wrong. It's possible. People have been wrong before.
And the delineation, I think, is ego from heart and soul. So again, what Mike, I think, is saying, the folks that told him the song wasn't any good turned out to be a big hit. He felt in his heart how strongly the song was, not his ego wasn't like, I'm an amazing songwriter, this is so great. Sure. So I think that's the difference between what Gregg is saying and what Mike is saying. Also, I generally give my songwriters the early advice, very similar to what I told you before, was say yes. I have so many young songwriters like, I'm not doing that, I don't want to try that. You don't win and you don't get better by saying no. Say yes, give it a try, and you're not going to learn anything from doing nothing. So you got to get out there and again, sort of like participate and try not to be afraid to fail. We're going to fail a lot. We're all very successful here, and we all still fail more often than we don't. But we get up again tomorrow and try all over again.
The one thing I would say, and I just want to complete the circle, because you said what are the things people don't do? Don't sign a contract because someone hands it to you ever. Know what it means before you do anything. And I know that seems really obvious, but in the heat of being liked or somebody being passionate about you, that is real business. And the moment you guys turn 18, you need to really pause and reflect and not let the heat of the moment get you to do something that could come back and haunt you. And that is one of those age-old stories in any entertainment business. Just be mindful of that. The one thing I'll tell you is that this is a business of magnificently insecure people who have extraordinary bravado. And one example of that I've found is I've sat in meetings as recently as last week with big executives at big major companies, and they insist on telling me what big writer wrote the song before they play the song to me. But I don't really care. And if you're on Spotify and you're noodling around, you're not really caring. I don't think you guys listen to a new record that you hear and think it's cool, and then you like, before you hear it, you're like, let me just make sure that these 5 writers are the ones writing it before I listen to it, and that will dictate if I like it. So part of it is making sure that you don't buy into that insecurity. It's okay, to Gregg's point, you have to have truth tellers in your life. On the other hand, you have to be fearless about what you do. And the best thing about technology today is that the arbiter of who decides whether the shit that you write is good or not is when you put stuff up on YouTube or you put stuff up on Spotify, which all of you have access to, and you let real people decide, with the understanding that people will write sometimes really terribly hateful stuff. But if you're going to play in this business where we play, then you also have to have the stomach and the character to be able to withstand it.
I cannot stress enough what Billy said about the contracts. I obviously, as a publisher, offer contracts fairly often, and I definitely, absolutely try to get the writers to understand, like, the win is not the deal. I came from a record company and a publishing company, and a lot of the artists and writers, the fail is once they get their record deal or publishing deal, that's a sense of relief and they've made it. That you're really not, haven't made it and you're really just getting started, and Billy is absolutely correct. I will beg any writer not to sign to me if they don't think it's right. I'd rather have you sort of feel like this is going to be the pathway and the group of folks that are going to help me get and attain my dreams than just put a couple of dollars in your pocket, because that money will go very quickly and your career will be super stalled. So that's really, really awesome advice from Billy.
Hi, I'm Jesse Hammer. At the risk of sounding repetitious, thanks for being here. So I've noticed that when I listen to songs that are historically recognized as very good, like I don't know, Hotel California, for example, I noticed that there's often long instrumental breaks without the singers themselves doing anything. So I think it's fairly, one might notice that there's probably some sort of artistic benefit to doing so. What I would ask is, what is that benefit?
The benefit of having a long instrumental break?
Yes.
Well, I think back in the day with songs like that, it was a different animal. Like, I came up listening to like records like that. Like, I listened to like Led Zeppelin, you know, jammed out on Stairway to Heaven for 7.5 minutes. I think it's indicative of, you know, at that time, that music is like guitar-focused rock. So a lot of it's about like the, you know, the big guitar solo, where you can get away with that. I think nowadays, everything is being contracted. So I think that, you know, long instrumental bridges have been kind of removed because everything's on a time schedule. If you look at radio, they're trying to play as many songs as they can, and Spotify only counts a stream at 30 seconds. So they want to hook you quick, and they want you to play that song again and again. So it's kind of a bummer because, you know, I mean, who doesn't love a good guitar solo or an instrumental break? And I think there's still room for that musically, probably more in a synchronization area, which is like when we put music to picture, or score, for instance. You know, there's still room for that, but you know, it's definitely cool to have just instrumental music. It's just, commercially speaking, it's difficult to monetize if you've got this big long thing in the middle. So it's not saying it's a good or bad thing, it's just kind of the way it's gone, I would say.
I can't believe you just dissed the guitar solo from Hotel California. It's unbelievable. I mean, it's a different time in history. Electric guitar was still like in its development stage, so people are interested in the sound of it, just like you're interested in DJ culture now. So you can have a drop that lasts for, you know, if you're in a club, it's going to last for 2 minutes. It's not 7 minutes, but you know, music traditionally is at the front edge of culture, so it's whatever sounds exciting. You can't get enough of it, and then combine that with a little ADD and just general what it takes to stimulate the average human being's mind versus 100 years ago, and it all kind of makes sense. So I think When I hear Hotel California, as a guitar player, I loved it when I was 14 years old because you admired the craftsmanship of it. When I listen to it now, I change the station. I'm with you. I think you got to let these things go and you move on and you understand that music's in a different place. And when I hear an instrumental break in a Bruno Mars song and horns are blasted, or I'm listening to a Kygo song and it's like, I get it. It's the same thing that the Eagles were doing. It was like, let the music breathe and just feel it. Just different sound. So I think you have to just accept that and you'll kind of maybe appreciate it and see it through the lens that maybe your parents and grandparents saw their generation's music.
Just to follow up on that, there seems to be a slight resurgence in rock right now with bands like Greg Van Fleet and some of the alt genre that's catching. I know my Spotify recommended is just all new music and it's all rock. And I think that's somewhat impressive. As someone that's obviously more in the industry, more closer to this, how real is that? And what do you think the longevity will have?
I actually have a pretty strong opinion about it. Especially because as I said, I worked at a record company before, publishing, and now focused on songs. You realize how important the strength of the song is to a style of music's stability, I guess, and viability. So I don't know that there's a resurgence in rock necessarily, and one or two songs doesn't necessarily make a trend or a shift in direction. It's pretty dominated by hip hop. The music industry is at the moment, and it's influenced by hip hop. I'm finding artists, because I generally do, as a publisher, find folks very early, pop artists from all over the country that are singer-songwriters, not dissimilar from the folks that perform today, but influenced by hip hop, not even necessarily on purpose. So they're listening to hip hop, they're writing singer-songwriting songs, or writing singer-songwriting material, but in a sort of a hip hop cadence, and with sort of maybe not street references, but sort of a little bit more conversational the way hip hop is delivered. So I think rock's actually going to sort of rise from hip hop. So you can even, I'm sure there are Post Malone fans here. Post Malone is already sort of evoluting from a straight hip hop artist to a bit of a blend of things. So I think the next resurgence in rock will sort of come out of hip hop. I hope I'm wrong, because I think I love rock and I kind of miss it. But I also just sort of love all styles of music, and I think at some point, again, the artists make better records, write better songs, no matter what style of music it is, that'll have its heyday once again.
I would comment just in terms of what defines rock also. It's shifted. And for example, we publish a band called Lovely the Band, which has this song Broken, which has been #1 in alternative for 6 weeks. And they've been at it. These guys have been at it for a long time. But that's alternative rock, which now is getting some play on pop stations. So what kind of rock is that? At the same time, and I'm mentioning this only because I lost one of the writers that we represented, a guy called Cato Quandala, who produced Pop Evil and had a #1 active rock record less than a couple months ago. And active rock is a totally different kind of rock than alternative rock. So I think what's happening from looking at it from a purely rock perspective is that just like any other genre, there's segmentation. So I think Greta Van Fleet, which I love the band, is actually speaking to a lot of people in a way because it's capturing something of the past and modernizing it without attaching it to the technology. And I think that there's going to be a wave of that, but I think what you're going to find more and more in the rock genre, and that's just my opinion as a publisher, is that segmentation, each one is going to grow and become its own mini format within rock. And I think that's cool, and I think that will then ultimately cause really cool collisions, and those collisions will be with hip hop, and those collisions will be with EDM, and what was once industrial will now morph into something else. So I think we don't know, and that's what makes it fun.
Yeah, one last thing I'll add to that just is, if you look at the landscape from 20,000 feet, there's just more pipes. So basically, Spotify has way more bandwidth than the way the generation before you guys listened to music, which was traditionally radio. So radio has about 30 slots on any given station. Spotify is unlimited slots, so you can have Lovely the Band sitting next to Post Malone on their own playlist. Nobody's crowding anybody out. Radio, for somebody to get a slot, someone else had to lose a slot. So it's, you know, so basically, what Rich was saying, if you go to radio, you look at those 30 slots, 28 of them are hip hop and pop. Those bands are not living there. Billy's band, they may break through. That, you know, there's traditionally 2 or 3 of those for every 30 that isn't that. So it isn't a movement. I think it's more of just the lanes have opened up, which is great. And Spotify's basically, it's a credit for that. So a lot of good music is coexisting right now, which is really refreshing.
Yeah, I think we're all saying segment of the same thing. And I agree with Billy that things are segmented and everything gets its heyday. I think we've all been around, maybe not Mike, around long enough to sort of see every genre of music have like this giant heyday and then sort of like up and over the hill for something else. So certainly that'll continue. That's sort of like the way the world is. History repeats itself. So we will certainly see greatness in all styles of music.
The Fleetwood Mac song, Never Going Back Again, is just a guitar part. It doesn't have drums or bass or anything, but it still has like a full sound, and it's still captivating. Like, how do you manage to do that?
That's the one with the acoustic guitar, like going crazy, right? I actually read something about this that Buckingham had to restring his guitar every 20 minutes because the producer told him that that's what he wanted to like make it sound a certain way, and they just stacked the guitar like 50 times to make it sound so crazy. That's one of those like crazy stories, like producer stories, like, you know, the producer made me like run in the rain for, you know, an hour or something until I was shivering and then made me sing or something. I don't know if that happens anymore, but
you also have to be a great guitar player. Like Lindsey Buckingham's a ridiculous guitar player, and what great guitar players can do is they can play the same thing 20 times exactly the same way. So take GarageBand, write a cool guitar part, record it 20 times on top of itself, and it'll sound massive. But you have to play it the same way every time. If you don't, it gets out of focus sort of sounding. It gets blurry. So that's what, it's multi-tracking. It's basically, it's doubling and tripling and just stacking the guitars on top of itself. And you do enough of them, you do it with anything, drums, your voice, strings, it's gonna sound like a wall of sound.
And pan them out.
Yeah, pan them left and right and all over the place and do a ton of them, and you'll be amazed at how big it sounds.
Hi, my name is Mohammed, and I wanted to ask, how do you guys find consistency within your songwriting? I understand that songwriting is a field where they can have like enormous amount of success and next day could like all vanish. So how do you guys find consistency?
This is what I'll tell you. You're gonna work for days on a single song, then you're gonna go and play it for somebody who's a decision maker after you put that heart into it. And they're gonna listen to 20 seconds and they're gonna go, eh. You're gonna spend a career with the understanding that the 2-step process is step 1, you create, and step 2, you're judged. And it is not for people who cannot take that kind of criticism. You have to have a very strong core in order to do it. And when you hear stories of these artists who are wildly insecure or have insane anxiety, a lot of it can stem from maybe in the beginning they struck gold right away and then they spend the rest of their lives trying to reclaim that moment of approval. And I'm not trying to stereotype all writers. It all comes in different ways. But this is an industry where it's at the best case scenario, every new act is an 80% fail probability. Every new act. Not 2, not 10. And that is something that if you're looking at it objectively, to survive in this, you need to be prepared for it. And I'm so happy I can leave you on that very happy, positive note.
The next thing that we have up is it's nice to hear, no matter how successful you are, right? It's nice to hear your songs covered. So we have a group of kids who have covered some of your songs for you that would like to do a medley right now. So guys, come on out. We have Rashni, Kelly, Zainab, Noel, Meredith, Dylan, and Grace.
Give me reasons to believe that you would do the same. I would do it for you, baby. I'm not moving on. I'll love you long after you're gone. For you, you will never sleep alone. I'll love you long after you're gone, gone, gone. If God is a DJ, life is a dance floor, love is the rhythm, you are the music. If God is a DJ, life is a dance floor, you get what you're given, it's all how you use it. Say something, I'm giving up on you. I'm sorry that I couldn't get to you. Anywhere I would follow you. Oh, say something, I'm giving up on you. Let's start over. I try to do it right this time around. It's not over, 'cause a part of me is dead and in the ground. This love is killing me, but you're the only one. It's not over.
I've been moving condescending, trying to keep it peaceful is a struggle for me. Don't pull up at 6 a.m. to cuddle with me. You know how I like it when you love me. I don't want to die with this. Yes, I see the things that they wish in. Hope I got some brothers that live me. They could tell a story it was different. God's way, God's way. I go back sometimes I don't. I feel good sometimes I don't. I finesse that western road.
Oh, I don't know what you've been told, but this is how I keep going through again. And it's what I'm gonna be, 'cause I don't wanna be. No, I don't wanna sit still pretty. You get off on your 9 to 5 dream. You make it dances and trophy wise, but you know I'm never gonna be, 'cause I don't wanna be. No, I don't wanna sit still pretty. I believe that we're meant to be. Jealousy, 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 and the rest of me.
Come on, we can do a little better than that. Come on. All right. So for this next part here, I'm going to play a video that talks about artificial intelligence. It's a viral video called "Humans Need Not Apply." I'm not going to play the whole thing, but I'm going to play a part of it. And specifically, they talk about creative jobs. So I'm going to segue that into a couple of new companies that are, San Francisco-based companies that are using AI to create music that are going to be competing with, traditional music houses and the kinds of jobs that you guys are doing. So let's take a look at this. All right, so that backing track that you just heard was composed by Amber Music. And that artist, I think her name is Tareen or something like that, wrote the top line on it. So I'm just curious, after seeing this video and seeing what currently exists and what is just around the corner for all of us, what you guys think of this and how how are we best prepared to work with AI and in some ways compete with it?
I think I'm going to go home and find a robot to do my job and make it real easy. No, I think it's funny watching that. We're already there in my mind. Where I go to the studio, I have producers and writers who I collaborate with, and there's so many tools available that are just sort of pre-existing sound bites that are just amassed by creative people. You guys know this. It's how producers work now. There used to be a day where a guy sat in a room with a bass guitar and he figured out some ways to make it sound not like a bass guitar. Now if you're putting a song together, you have all that information sitting on some hosting site and you're just putting it together and you don't have to create the original sound. So my thought is with AI tied to the creation of music, the playing field is going to be the same for everybody. We'll all have access to the same tools, and like anything else in life, the most creative person will use it in the best and most interesting way. The average person could make a pretty good sounding backing track like that. Sounds like a pretty good backing track, nothing I haven't heard before. But it'll take somebody really special to do it, to take it and make it interesting and better than the rest of the world would do it. So I think you're just going to still need a highly skilled creative person in any, you could be cooking or making a song, it doesn't matter. I think they're just going to serve up the information to you, and then there has to be some magic and inspiration happening there. So that may be just the human in me, but I feel like enough has existed before to tell me that that's again how it's gonna play out.
I mean, I think there's two conversations. Conversation one is artificial intelligence, is that a part of our lives? Will it be a growing part of our lives? Absolutely, yes. The second conversation is, how does that relate to us as creators? And I actually think what Gregg said is 100% true, and I'm gonna give him a big compliment on top of it. So you should record this. You should record this.
Hold on a second.
He's a very handsome man. He's an intelligent man.
Wait, rewind that for a
okay.
second.
No, we've known each other a long time. So Gregg was a part of producing a record by Five for Fighting years ago, and it's apropos to everybody sitting here because the song transformed the country after 9/11. There isn't artificial intelligence that can create a moment that captures a time and a place and the emotion that the record that he made with John Ondrasik, what it did for people. And so we see artificial intelligence and it freaks us out. And in some ways it should. But to your point, it's there to augment what we're doing. There are some realities to it. If you need legal advice and you know that artificial intelligence is going to give you 90% precision legal advice, and a human being who went to law school will give you 70%. I know who I'm going to go to for advice. And if I have a medical condition and I know that a nurse can give me 75% really good medical advice, but IBM Watson is going to give me 99% on point medical advice, I'm going to go to Watson, right? We all agree to that? Yes? So what it really comes down to is, can you replace artists? And you can't. And I will fight until I die, and maybe I'll be the only one left to say that that painting that Gregg helped capture during a very particular time in the world can never be replicated. Just like I listen to hip hop records that reflect a certain time, like Bad and Bougie will not be made out of computers. It just won't, because there's so much built into the African American experience in hip hop culture that how on earth is like, I'm sorry, and I'm not saying this to make stereotypes, but whether it's a rock record or Greta Van Fleet or whether it's Migos, you cannot manufacture the dust in a rehearsal space in Boston, or whose girlfriend broke up and had stress and tension, which caused that conflict, which prompted the creativity that gave birth to that record. So I'm saying it from the most romantic place, which ultimately you have to be to withstand the music industry, that this is all really cool, but nobody can replicate what Gregg helped create on that day. And in the same way, your obligation, if you want to be in this space, is to make sure that you are not solely relying on derivative inspiration, but speaking from the most uncomfortable places in your human being self, and allowing that to dictate what you write and what you sing and what you produce. If you do that, this is going to be a great additive to your life experience in music. If you don't, then, go be a great programmer and get out of the way for the rest of us who want to create art.
You'll need a human to make it human, basically.
What?
So you'll always need a human to make it human.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that was pretty good. I would just say that, listening to this stuff, the instrumental stuff specifically, that would worry me because, I couldn't tell until they said, that it was a computer-composed track, But I do think, even if AI kind of takes over or insinuates itself more into the creative space for making songs, I still think there's an element of even just the listeners who they want to know that it was a human that made it. They want to know the story. One of my great joys, with listening to songs is like looking up the story. How did this come to be? Why did this person write this song? I know a lot of people don't do that, but maybe in the future it'll be something like, this is slap a sticker on it, 100% verified human song. I think that's a possibility that it may come to that, but to your point, you need a human behind it to be human, and the reason that is that way is because we're not perfect. So I think everybody who makes great records probably wishes it could be like a little better, and so I think that that's something that maybe translates that, it's not going to be this, cookie cutter, perfect, flawless piece like the ones they were just playing. But it's a little scary, but I do think that authenticity of human experience is something that you can't really replace, particularly when it comes to making art. And I think that we're going to be just fine.
I enjoyed hearing what you guys had to say about that, especially, and thank you for bringing up, the Five for Fighting song, Superman, because I didn't necessarily want to bring it up, but I was, definitely aware of it, and it really was, special, especially for this school, because this was, right after this school was built, this was ground zero, and this is where the first responders were. So, these kids weren't alive yet. Yeah. So anyway, I think that wraps up our session for today. We got to let these guys get back to work and write some more hit songs. So thank you all, all of you for being here. It really meant a lot to the school. It meant a lot to the Songwriters Hall of Fame. It meant a lot to me, to meet all of you, and I enjoy your music very much. So a big round of applause for these guys.